The city is a living thing. Its streets are like veins flowing with people day and night. For most, it's a place of endless possibility, but for others, it's a cold wilderness. For an 11-year-old girl named Maya, the city was just a daily fight to survive. You can be surrounded by millions of people and still be completely, utterly alone. Maya's life was tough, a story you could see in the graffiti-covered alleys she called home and feel in the constant hunger in her stomach. She was an orphan, a ghost in a city that never saw her. But inside this forgotten little girl was a spark of kindness that refused to go out. A kindness that was about to be tested in a way she could never imagine. A cold drizzle fell from a gloomy grey sky, sticking strands of matted hair to Maya's thin face. She huddled in an alleyway, the damp cold seeping right through her threadbare coat. Her world was made of grey pavement, the sound of hurried footsteps, and the hollow ache of hunger that never seemed to leave. She couldn't remember what a mother's hug felt like, or a father's smile. The city's unforgiving streets were her only family. Just then, a faint mewing sound cut through the city's noise. A tiny kitten, no bigger than her hand and soaked to the bone, was trembling under an old newspaper. You could see every one of its ribs. In that moment, Maya saw a creature who had even less than she did. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the only thing she had, a small, stale piece of bread she'd been saving. She carefully broke it in two and nudged the bigger half towards the kitten. "Here," she whispered. "You need this more than me." It was a simple act of kindness that no one saw. This was Maya's world. She spent her days digging through trash cans for recyclables to earn a few coins, her eyes scanning crowds for anyone who might drop a little spare change. But people's eyes just slid right past her. They didn't see a child. They saw a problem to be ignored. She had learned a long time ago that being poor and alone meant being invisible. The rain finally stopped, leaving the streets slick and shiny. The hunger in Maya's stomach was back, that familiar, gnawing ache. She pulled her thin coat tighter and started her walk through the familiar city streets. The city was a world of contrasts, glittering bakeries with displays of food she could only dream of, just feet away from the alleys where she searched for scraps. As she rounded a busy corner, she saw something that made her freeze. A woman was leaning against the cold brick wall of a fancy shop, looking panicked and in terrible pain. She was wearing a simple tracksuit that didn't scream money, but it was clear something was wrong. She was pregnant, and she was cradling her belly, her face pale and covered in sweat. People just walked right by. A man in a nice suit glanced at her, looked concerned for a second, then seemed to decide it wasn't his problem and walked faster. A group of teenagers laughed as they passed, not even noticing her. The world just kept moving, completely indifferent to the woman's silent suffering. It was a scene Maya knew all too well. For a second, Maya hesitated. A little voice in her head, the one that had kept her alive on the streets, told her to just keep walking. What could a kid like her do? But then she looked at the woman's face, at the pure fear in her eyes. The same part of her that had fed the kitten wouldn't let her walk away. Taking a deep breath, Maya pushed her own hunger and fear aside and stepped forward. "Ma'am?" she asked, her voice small but steady. Are you okay?" The woman, whose name was Isabella, just barely managed a nod, her face twisting in pain. She tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Maya's quiet question was the first time anyone had acknowledged she was even there. Isabella's eyes, full of pain and a little bit of gratitude, locked onto Maya's. "My baby," she whispered, her voice strained. "I think it's coming. It's too early." Panic shot through Maya. She didn't know the first thing about babies, but she knew this woman couldn't stay on the sidewalk. She had to get help. She turned to the crowd. "Please!" she yelled, her small voice swallowed by the city noise. "Somebody help! This lady needs a doctor!" People just looked away or walked faster. To them, she was just another street kid causing a scene, maybe even trying to pull a scam. That's when a man in a sharp suit stopped. He looked at Maya's ragged clothes, then at Isabella, and sneered. "Get away from her, you little grub," he said, his voice dripping with disgust. "Trying to pick her pockets while she's vulnerable? Disgusting. Somebody should call the cops on you." The words hit Maya like a slap. Tears stung her eyes. She was used to being invisible, but having her kindness twisted into something ugly felt like a whole new kind of cruelty. For a moment, she wanted to run and hide. But then she looked at Isabella, who seemed to be getting worse. Maya's resolve hardened. She wasn't going to let some cruel man stop her. She turned back to Isabella. "Don't listen to him," she said, her voice full of a fierceness she didn't know she had. "I'm going to help you, I promise." Then she remembered something. A few months back, she'd found a small community clinic a few blocks away. It wasn't fancy, but it was their only shot. "Can you walk?" Maya asked. Isabella shook her head. "Okay," Maya said, thinking fast. "Lean on me. It's not far. We can make it." Using a strength she didn't know she had, Maya put her small shoulder under Isabella's arm and took as much of her weight as she could. It was a struggle. Maya was a little girl running on fumes, but she gritted her teeth and pushed forward. With every step, passers-by would stare at the strange sight, the dirty kid holding up the pregnant woman, but nobody offered to help. Isabella was shivering, so without a second thought, Maya took off her own thin coat and draped it over her shoulders. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. "We're almost there," Maya panted, her own body screaming in protest. "Just a little more. You're doing great. Just hold on." They finally stumbled through the doors of the free clinic. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman, took one look at Maya's dirty clothes and was about to shoo her away. But then she saw Isabella, who was now barely conscious, and she snapped into action. "Get her back here, now!" she yelled. Two nurses rushed out with a wheelchair and wheeled Isabella through a set of swinging doors. The doors swung shut, and Maya was alone in the waiting room. The adrenaline faded, and a deep exhaustion set in. She sank into a hard plastic chair, feeling smaller and more invisible than ever. Hours went by. Finally, one of the nurses came out. She saw Maya huddled in the corner and her expression softened. She handed Maya a cup of hot chocolate. "You were very brave," the nurse said with a kind smile. "The woman is stable. We had to perform an emergency procedure, but she and the baby are going to be okay. We were able to get in touch with her husband." Relief washed over Maya so hard it almost made her dizzy. She just clutched the warm cup, happy she could help. Suddenly, the clinic doors burst open. A man in a perfectly tailored suit rushed in, his face frantic with worry. "I'm here for Isabella Rossi," he said, his voice commanding. "I'm her husband, Daniel Rossi." The name didn't mean anything to Maya, but the entire staff suddenly stood a little straighter. A few minutes later, the kind nurse came back to Maya. "Mrs. Rossi is asking for you," she said, her voice now full of awe. "She wants to see the girl who saved her." Maya hesitantly followed the nurse to a private room. Isabella was in a bed, looking tired but awake. The rich-looking man, Daniel, was holding her hand. When Isabella saw Maya in the doorway, her face broke into a tearful smile. "There you are," Isabella whispered. "I didn't even get to thank you. You saved us. You saved my life, and you saved our son's life." Daniel Rossi turned and looked at Maya, really looked at her, from her worn-out sneakers to her matted hair. But there was no judgment in his eyes, only a deep, overwhelming gratitude. He knelt down to her level. "My jet was halfway to London when I got the call," he said, his voice shaking a little. "I've never been so scared in my life. The doctors said if you hadn't gotten her here when you did..." He couldn't finish the sentence. The word jet just hung in the air. Maya looked from the man's expensive watch to the beautiful ring on Isabella's finger, and the pieces started to click into place. Isabella saw the confusion on her face. "Maya," she said gently, "my husband, he owns Rossi Corp. We have more money than we could ever need. But none of that mattered when I was on that street. The only thing in the world that mattered was the kindness of one little girl who had nothing. You, who have so little, gave me everything." The truth washed over Maya, not with excitement, but with a quiet, stunning shock. The woman she had covered with her own tattered coat was a millionaire. Their worlds were universes apart, but in that small clinic room, the huge gap between them was bridged by a single act of kindness. Maya stood frozen, completely overwhelmed. She just shook her head and mumbled, "I'm just glad you're okay." Her simple, honest answer seemed to touch Isabella and Daniel even more. Isabella looked at her husband, a silent decision passing between them. "We can never truly repay you, Maya," Daniel said, his voice soft. "What you did was priceless. But we can't let you go back to that life. We want to offer you more than a reward. We want to offer you a home." Isabella continued, "For years, Daniel and I prayed we could have a child, and on the day our son is finally born, he's saved by another child. It feels like a sign." She held out her free hand to Maya. "We don't just want to give you a place to live, Maya. We want to be your family. We want to adopt you." Adopt. A family. Parents. A home. These were fairy tale words to Maya, things she only dreamed about to keep the loneliness away. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. Not tears of sadness, but of a hope so big it was almost painful. Months later, the scene is completely different. The grey, cold city is gone, replaced by the warm, golden light of a beautiful living room. The home isn't flashy, it's just filled with books, warmth, and laughter. Maya is there, but she's transformed. She's wearing clean clothes, her hair is brushed, and she has a healthy glow. She's sitting on a rug, laughing as Daniel makes a silly face. Isabella is nearby, holding her healthy baby boy, watching them both with pure joy. Maya's life has completely changed. She has a warm bed, good food, and is going to a great school. But all the money hasn't changed who she is. In the final scene, we see Maya at an animal shelter, gently petting a small kitten that looks just like the one from the alley. She's whispering to it with the same tenderness as before. Her kindness wasn't a one-time thing. It's just who she is. Her new life didn't erase her past. It gave her the chance to spread even more good in the world. True wealth isn't about what's in your bank account. It's about the kindness in your heart. Maya's story is a powerful reminder of that. The world judged her by her dirty clothes and empty pockets, but her goodness shone brighter than any fortune. Her one selfless act didn't just save 2 lives, it created a family and changed everyone's future. It goes to show that you don't need to have a lot to give a lot. Sometimes the greatest generosity comes from those who have the least to spare. Kindness is the one currency that makes everyone richer. If this story touched your heart, please share it to spread the message that any one of us can make a world of difference. What does kindness mean to you? Let us know in the comments below.